Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Wednesday morning, progressives, and welcome to the March 5th, almost said May, the March 5th, 2025 edition of Choose Views here on WCPT 773-763-9278, Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. That's where you'll find us. Email me at richard@WCPT820.com. Catch me on Substack. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. There you can get Choose Views short version and long versions, also known as the featured interviews. We can also tell you that you can find Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive over there. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, a big picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and our other shows and interviews. Check out our HeartlandSignal.com digital platform, because you have stuff to share over there, which we will be talking about a little bit later in the show, as always. Good to be with all of you this morning. We have three wonderful guests that will be joining us in the 6:30 hour, so we will be keeping it moving. Samara Hanason will be with us, who will be talking, excuse me, guys, she'll be talking about making sure that we have a clean and reliable and affordable grid for all of our electricity and energy efficiencies. I think it's an important topic and conversation. So she'll be with us shortly, 6:30 hour. Kurt Mullett will be with us at 7, talking everything Hoosier Blue 63. And Jay Dill, the Director of Budgetary Analysis at the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability, CTBA, will be with us in the 7:30 hour. So we will be... We'll be busy this morning, just letting you guys know. We will be busy, and look forward to your calls. Still call in, even though we've got our guests that are going to be back-to-back. I want you guys to give us a holler, and we'll get you squeezed in between the guests as best we possibly can. That being said, I'm going to dive right into some Choose Views news items, and we'll keep it moving, because your grocery bill is about to go up. U.S. tariffs on Canada, China, and Mexico will raise the cost of everything from produce to alcohol to lumber, according to the New York Times. Exactly when these hikes will hit, consumers will depend on the product, with perishables impacted first, followed by durable goods such as cars and electronics that have built up inventory. Target's CEO predicted shoppers will pay more for fruits and vegetables within days, while Best Buy's chief executive says its vendors will pass along tariff costs to consumers. How much more plain does it need to be made, MAGA? The experts are telling you, have been telling you. Continuing on, trade war roils global stock markets. We saw what happened yesterday. The major U.S. stock indexes closed lower yesterday though they regained some ground following some steeper declines earlier in the day. Volatility reflected growing concerns about the economic repercussions of the trade war ignited by U.S. tariffs. No, those are Donald Trump tariffs. Stop calling them U.S. tariffs. They're Donald Trump tariffs. While the S&P 500 ended the day in the red, the index partly recovered from a 2% decline, a level that threatened to wipe out, check this out, Henry, $3.4 trillion post-election rally. Stock indexes in Europe and Asia fell sharply earlier on Tuesday. Target warns of looming slowdown. Target is the latest big box retailer to flash a warning sign about slowing consumer spending. Though the company, which reported its fourth quarter financial results Tuesday, was buoyed by stronger than expected sales of toys, electronics, and apparel over the holiday period, it's expecting a meaningful drop in sales during the current quarter. Brian Cornell also cautioned that produce prices are likely to rise in coming days now that tariffs on Mexico imports are in effect. And the hits just keep coming. U.S. tariffs hitting Canada have officially gone into effect. Most imports from both countries now subject to 25% levies. But Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick signaled a possible compromise as early as today. Meanwhile, the U.S. doubled its trade tariff on Chinese goods to 20%. Stocks fell after Trump announced that there was no room left to negotiate the duties. Jeep, also, the maker of Jeep just got hit with a 25% tariff on roughly 500,000 vehicles and imports into the United States each year from Canada and Mexico. Stellantis, along with other European car makers, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, stand to lose an estimated $6.2 billion in earnings if they absorb the cost of the levy. But passing it through to consumers would add up to $10,000 MAGA to the price tag. A non-starter in a competitive sales environment. Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order this week requiring state workers to return to the office 4 days a week. The mandate, which is expected to take effect on July 1st, will impact roughly 95,000 employees who are currently required to work in the office at least 2 days per week. The state currently employs more than 220,000 full-time workers, which is about 60% report to work in person daily. And last but not least, a little bit of a happy story, I guess you could say, with that gloom and doom. Younger viewers boost the Oscar ratings. Last weekend's Academy Awards saw a 1% increase in viewership over 2024, with 19.7 million viewers tuning into the award show on Sunday on ABC and Hulu. That total, a 5-year ratings high, came despite glitches in the Hulu stream and a more international and independent-leaning group of Oscar nominees. Younger viewers driving much of the growth, of course. Nielsen had initially reported a 7% audience decline in its early estimates, which did not include viewers who watched via mobile devices and computers. So, young folks are kicked it in gear with regard to the weekend event. So, guys, so folks, so progressives, we saw the display last night, and I've got some comments on it that we'll get to when we come back from this first break. But before we go to that break, I do want to point out something that I mentioned a moment ago in the Choose Views news, and that would be the how the economy is being impacted. Already, we are seeing that just yesterday with the markets. And whether you study the markets or not, you pay attention to the markets or not, it's clear that the tariffs aren't having any positive impact on our markets. You can try to bend yourself into a pretzel, MAGA, folks in the middle of the road politically, but they're not. We've seen, and I want to. This is just a comment that Trump made that should come back on him, but we know how he lies and is full of BS, and that's this. So he made this comment back in 2012, I believe it was, Henry, that said that any time if the markets have 1,000-point decline over I guess it was a 2-day period of time, if I'm quoting this correctly, that the president should be impeached for that. So Republicans, let's see how much you hold your boy to the fire on something that he said should happen, because it's happened. MAGA, let's see how much you hold your boy to the fire, because it happened. It's happened the last 2 days. So last night was what it was, and we're going to talk about it after the break, but we'll see how many people really are going to talk about this from the perspective of what I like to call, like the old song, Lies, Lies, Lies. Who was that song by? I can see the name of the group right now. Henry's going to help me out with it, but yeah, Lies, 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 yeah, whatever the song is. I don't know if I can do that on the air, but I just did it. So there you go. So listen, couple quick shout outs, and then we'll hit the break. I want to give a shout out to one of our good folks out in California, John, who was so kind enough as to make a point of supporting some of our organizations that we have had on the show. And so shout out to you, John, for reaching out to the folks that are doing the good work. And thank you for your support of them. Also, I want to give a shout out to a listener in New York, Brian. Thank you for your wonderful email. I appreciate what you said about not only the show and the callers and the guests, but also the work that we're doing here to bring you the best that we can every single day. So shout out to both of you. And I appreciate the fact that you guys are making the effort to help in the effort that we put out to make things better for the folks that we are bringing the message to. That would be you, wonderful progressives, and all the rest. So let's take a quick break, Henry. When we come back, we'll talk about last night. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Donald Trump is lying to you. Here's the truth. It's simple. Tariffs are a tax on Americans. When you buy something, you pay the tariff, not some foreign country. Trump's tariffs will raise the price on things like tomatoes and prescription medicines, electronics, toys, and more. Grocery prices are rising because of Trump's tax. New car prices are rising because of Trump's tax. Beer prices are rising because of Trump's tax. And he has no plan for what happens next. He doesn't care about the farmer who relies on machinery from Canada to operate their farm, or the small business owner who needs supplies from Europe, or the parents who need to feed their families every day at a reasonable cost. While Trump is causing higher prices in Illinois, lowering the burden on working families is what we're all about. We've eliminated the grocery tax and raised the minimum wage. We lowered income taxes on workers and erased medical debt for nearly 300,000 Illinoisans, with more to come. And while we can't combat every part of Trump's tax, it's a start. Protecting Illinoisans from the economic hardship Trump is imposing is one of my most important missions as your governor.
And there you go. Leadership. Step into the mic, stepping forward. And I am proud of our Governor Pritzker, proud of our blue governors, period, throughout the nation. And that's what it's going to take. That's going to be part of the firewall that has to be there. And Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton are doing the work, and all of the people that are part of the administration are doing the work to sustain and protect, to sustain our state and to protect our state's citizens. Those of you who are in other states that listen to our show, I hope that you are getting the support that you deserve from your elected officials, particularly if you're in a blue state. I hope that they're stepping up. Those of you who are in red states, we're here for you to the best of our ability. But I will say that I'm proud of our governor and what he's doing, and along with his administration. So let's talk about last night. I'm going to drive right into a point that I want to make right out of the gate. I said lies earlier. It was a cacophony of lies and bullying, and someone whose ego is so out of whack that he was telling the Democratic folk that were there that you should stand up for me. You saw that, Henry? Yeah. You should stand up for me. If you're not standing up for me, then you don't love America. So let me say something so that the folks who are upset that the Dems, I'm going to try to come at this as best I can in this short bit of time we have before our guest is on. I said on Monday and I said yesterday that I felt that the Dems should be there, Henry, that they should not be there en masse, because it just gives, they were in a tough position no matter what. And let me lay it out this way. They don't show up. There's this gaping hole of no Democrats there. It would have given Trump and all the Republicans and, frankly, the mainstream media, particularly that of Fox, to say the Dems didn't show up for the country. They weren't there to show up for the country. That, to me, would have been a terrible optic view. And I know a lot of people were saying this on social media, some in mainstream media, that they shouldn't show up. I don't agree with that, and I said it. I still don't agree that not showing up en masse, that would have been hugely problematic, and Trump would have ran on that for days, and the optics would have been crazy. I also don't agree that they all should have just gotten up and walked out. That would have done the same thing, because the language would have been, see, the Democrats are leaving you. They're leaving the country. Go away. All that Trumpism BS would have been right in his pocket to use. So those that did leave, and kudos to Representative Green. Don't mess with an old black man with a cane. Sorry, y'all. But when he stood up with that cane, Mike Johnson's a punk. And the reason that I'm okay with the fact that Representative Green did it the way that he did it is he was unyielding. He stood up. He wasn't going to be told to sit down. He didn't sit back down. You notice that he stayed standing until he left. That should tell you something. Now, not every person's going to be doing that or built that way. And that what we saw with Representative Green is someone that said, no, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to do it my way. And others did leave. Others did protest. Others had on T-shirts. People had the placards. So let me just lay this out as quickly and best as I can. Mike Johnson's a punk. Donald Trump's a punk. He's weak because he had to have that was orchestrated. They were prepared they were prepared to do that. That's why they called the sergeants. It was all theatrics. We get that. And it wasn't weakness on the Democrats' part because they don't have the numbers, y'all. Let's be honest here. They didn't have the numbers to make the statement that they needed to make. Now, if you want to blame somebody, blame the people that didn't vote in the midterms during President Obama's first term. Seriously. People didn't show up in the midterms for President Obama when a lot of this carnage from the Tea Party started. And you all know what I'm talking about, so look in the mirror. People that ran around saying, I voted for Obama, but didn't show up in the midterms. Okay? I'm serious. Don't blame the Democrats last night for not getting up and walking out. What I found more compelling and what's more important as we go forward and is this. By the Democrats sitting there with the placards, and those that left, but by them sitting there and showing their placards and staying, I believe the message really is we're staying and fighting, even though we're undermanned. I don't mean to be gender biased, but we're under-resourced in terms of the numbers. They stayed. I think that there's a lot to be said for that. I'm not trying to, listen, guys, I'm not trying to give them excuses. I'm just saying in that moment, that's what they had to do because leaving would have been terribly optic. And the media, the mainstream media on the right, which is Fox, CNN, both of them, because I put them similarly in many ways, they would have run with that. That would have been a bigger story. That probably would have been a bigger story than the actual speech itself. So what we have to do is help them change that by having the numbers. Florida 1st District, Florida 6th District, New York 23. Don't waste time whining at the Democrats for not doing what they couldn't really do to be effective last night. Spend your time and your energy getting on the phone, doing the work, helping to get those 3 congressional seats, those House seats. That's where you put your energy. Don't waste your time. Oh, the Democrats are punks and weak. No, Mike Johnson's a punk. Donald Trump is weak. And J.D. Vance is something else. So the good Lord keeps them out of my path. That being said, what matters is what the Dems do now. And thanks to Senator Alyssa Slotkin for the delivery that she brought. What matters now, guys, is what the Democratic leadership and all the Democratic elected officials, both House and Senate, do now. What matters is when folks like J.B. Pritzker get in front of a mic and speak like he did. And I'm looking for the other governors to do the same thing. If you want an optics opportunity now, I'm hoping that Jeffries and Schumer have a press conference today together. And if you really want to send a message, have all the Democrats in the House and in the Senate be at that press conference. That, to me, will be more impactful than walking out of the event last night. That's me. That's me not necessarily being a strategist, but looking at it from a very practical, pragmatic standpoint. What's the pragmatic thing to have done? It was to be there and to show up and to not leave en masse, make the statement with the placards, and then today come out fighting. Be a Black Panther. Come out fighting today. That's what you do from the elected official standpoint. No more of this mealy mouth from any of the leaders about we're going to policy this and policy that. No, we're going to kick some behind now because Donald Trump just flat out lied to you. And the Republicans on the right were disgusting in their way that they lacked decorum. That's how you fight this. Talk about lack of decorum. How about the Republicans on the right who were booing and cheering? You know, and not cheering and jeering. Sorry about that. That's what needs to be the message today. And I hope that they will be prepared to do that. That's my fingers crossed optimism. But it's also a very practical way and pragmatic way to approach this. Come out fighting today. Last night wasn't the time to fight. It was a time to protest in the way in which they did and leave it at that. So don't waste your time on social media going on about the Dems should have done this, the Dems should have done that. No. Encourage them to fight now. There's a phrase that's used, and I hope that I don't botch this, but sometimes you hold the line so you can live to fight another day. And in this case, that's what I believe the Dems had to do last night, is to hold the line so they can fight another day. So that's where we are, guys. And I'm hoping that you guys understand where I'm coming from with this and why I'm taking the position that I have, because I feel like that we give ourselves a lot more opportunity as we go forward if we take that position. Okay? Come out fighting. Be prepared now, because he'll be off to his next distraction, that being Trump. And we call out the lies regularly. Okay? So just wanted to calm some folks' nerves who might be saying the Dems should have done this. They should get behind them and support them. They didn't have the numbers last night. They had to play a little bit of defense. Okay? They had to play a little defense last night. Now they come out and they go after them. I hope that makes sense, guys. And I know that's something that you may not necessarily agree with my position on that, but I'm giving you what I think makes the most pragmatic sense under the circumstances. It could have gotten very disruptively ugly last night if 25 congressmen or women had done what Representative Green did. It would have turned into something that we didn't need to see. So just be mindful of that. It could have gotten in an ugly, and this is just, let's be honest, it's what Trump would have wanted. Henry's nodding his head profusely. It's what he would have wanted. He would have wanted to call. He would have probably, in addition to the Sergeant of Arms last night, he may have gone as far as saying, I'm gonna call the National. Well, he can't call the National Guard because it's actually in D.C. So let me clean that up. But he would have done something to reinforce his weakness or back up his weakness. I'm just saying. So, let's look at this from the standpoint of you live to fight another day. And that's how I had to process this last night because it gave me a damn headache, Henry. I was watching it and I was like, this is just, and part of my headache came from the fact that I had that moment, which I don't really get a lot now because I know how we got here. But I went, how in the hell did we get here? And what happened early on, which was that got in my gut, is that I thought about people that are across the world watching that and saying, good Lord, what the blank has happened to the United States of America? That's when it hit me in my gut. I was like, man, and they're right. The brothers and sisters that we have all over the world from all communities sat back last night and saw something that they probably themselves couldn't believe. So in your moments right now of being frustrated, which we all should be, let that be a tool, an opportunity to inspire you to continue to work, to continue to make the phone calls, to continue to find ways to support our elected officials on all levels, whether it be the mayor of your community, your county officials, your state officials, your governor, and, of course, our federal folks. That's what we have to do, guys. All right. We are going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk about making sure that our environment is clean and affordable when we get back. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, welcome back, Progressives. Thanks for being with us this morning. Your text messages have me laughing. A number of good ones. Some that have said that they watch with the sound off. One person said I only lasted 20 minutes. Right on, Lois. I got you. Brett, be safe out there. I know you're on the road. Thanks for your text as well, and others. So thank you for your text this morning, Deb. Also, man, oh man, oh man. All right, guys, we're going to pivot a little bit and take advantage of the fact that we have such wonderful people that are out, as always, doing the work to make sure that our environment, our society is just better. And it's hard work. But one of our guests this morning is an individual that's leaning in hard to making sure that not only the state of Illinois, but the country at large is doing a better job to make sure that we just have a better environment. And with us this morning is Samira Hanason, Energy Policy Director at the Illinois Environmental Council. Good morning, Samira. How are you today?
Good morning, Richard. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm keeping my throat clear this morning because I know there's a lot of things that could pop into my voice that I'm not going to say on the air. Given just so, and all due respect to you, I'm gonna keep it clean. No pun intended. Samira, take a moment, if you will, and tell us just basically who your organization is, how you were founded, and what are your primary missions and your primary charter right now? And then we'll get into some more specifics.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and good morning to all the movers and shakers at this hour. I'm joining you on behalf of my organization, the Illinois Environmental Council. We go by IEC, and we are a member and affiliate-based environmental nonprofit. We represent well over 130 environmental organizations all across the state of Illinois, and work to pass sound and responsible environmental and climate policy across the state. So we are also a founding member of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, or ICJC, and we're working very closely with that coalition to move forward a package of really great clean energy and climate policies this spring legislative session.
So, Samira, and thank you for that. What is your definition of clean energy? I think a lot of people, because you know how this is, you're a professional in this space. You've well-educated, well-educated person that's done the work to get to a point where you have not only the educational background, but you also have the experiential background. But a lot of people just don't get it. They don't know. It's sort of, what does that mean, Richard, when you talk about clean energy? So help folks have a little bit of a quick, kind of your 2-minute drill of what does clean energy really mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really great level-setting question. Clean energy essentially is energy that is not fossil fuel based. There are various definitions and whether clean is just renewables or not. I would say for the sake of this conversation that we'll be having around upgrading our grid infrastructure and ensuring that we're moving properly in our clean energy transition in the state of Illinois, that we're primarily looking at increasing our renewable energy sources, so wind, solar, geothermal, those types of sources.
Did I lose? You still there? Okay. So with that definition, or that sort of level set, as you put, the big thing that I hear a lot is, and I'm sure you hear this more than the regular folks like us here, in this space is, well, at what cost? This is expensive for us to have clean energy. And I think in many cases, people are talking about the literal the monetary cost, the cash, the financial investment. And so talk a little bit about what that means and what are some of the objectives you have in better explaining that to the community.
Sure. That's a really great question. And also let me take a step back and just mention, so what I'm really excited to talk about is the Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act. That's the primary energy omnibus bill that we're looking to move this spring session. It's Senate Bill 2473 and House Bill 3779. So just to provide a kind of architecture for how I'll address your question around cost as well. So in terms of costs in the space, we fortunately have been working really hard over the last few years to establish a pathway to transition away from fossil fuel sources to clean and renewable energy and bring the workforce with us. So it started with the Future Energy Jobs Act and then the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act over the last few years. And because of those foundations, the state has been able to start standing up workforce hubs and programs to transition our workforce and train new people entering the workforce in clean and green jobs. Now, on the consumer side, we are seeing that significant savings around energy efficiency programs, and that's something that we're really looking to dig into and ensure that residents all across the state, regardless of being within the Ameren or ComEd territories, have access to those energy efficiency programs on a level playing field. So energy efficiency sort of pays for itself. A stat that I really like is for every dollar spent on energy efficiency, consumers see about $3 in bill savings. Really, really like that. But additionally, as we work on modernizing our grid infrastructure, which is a primary focus right now, essentially in order to ensure that the grid and we're able to keep the lights on as we switch to more renewable energy and demand increases. And I can get into a little bit more of that. But as we see an increase projected in energy demand, we want to make sure that the grid can handle it. And because of that, we will see there will be price spikes for consumers if the state doesn't get ahead of it and ensure both consumer protections and also establish plans at the onset or as early as possible to set the stage.
Rather than having to go back in after the fact and make
exactly.
So going back to the bill or the act for a second, and I want to make sure that folks heard that it's the CRGA Act, and it's the third major energy bill to be worked on, to be passed in Illinois. And so just so that everybody's clear, it's the CRGA, and it's an affordability act for clean energy here in the state of Illinois. The reason that I'm going to say that that's important is because in a state like Illinois that has such a diverse community and a population that's starting to grow again, that's going to put more pressure, if you will, on our energy grid. And right now, from what you're saying, our energy grid is not stout enough to handle the increase in demand. And when you add to that the use of EVs in the state of Illinois, yet alone just energy in general, that's part of the reason that this bill, has got to be passed. So talk a little bit about that and why it's so critical that this legislation, given what's happening with the federal policy, and thought is so important right now.
Oh, yep, absolutely. And I heard a little bit of the end of your last segment. We are, as folks know on this call, we're seeing significant clawbacks on environmental funds at the federal level. We are seeing clawbacks of the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, and because of that, there is a domino effect of what environmental programs and opportunities we're going to be seeing over the next few years. And unfortunately, we're also anticipating that over the next 4 years, there won't be environmental investments coming down the line from the federal government. So in anticipation of that, we're kind of on our own here at the state level. Unfortunately, we do have leadership here in Illinois that's ready to dig in and continue to protect our environment and environmental policies. So with that said, it's incredibly important that we do pass this bill, the SURJA Act, because it will help stand this up for success over the next 4 years as we anticipate that lack of funding from the federal level.
So talk about this for a little bit, Samira. Allies. I mean, right now, I think is it Representative Ann Williams that is one of the big advocates in terms of this bill and helped to introduce it, if I'm correct, yesterday.
Yeah. She's fantastic. Talk
a little bit about your allies in the state and in both the House and the Senate as it relates, and the governor's role in what we're trying to get done. I mean, the governor's very, very pro energy, clean energy. I know that he is, and I know that the lieutenant governor is as well. But talk a little bit about your allies in this space.
Yeah, it's a really good question. We have Representative Ann Williams as our chief sponsor in the House, and Senator Bill Cunningham as our chief sponsor in the Senate. We have been working over the last close to a year now. We're coordinating with our legislators, the renewable energy industry, and our partners in those spaces. We've been working with ComEd and Ameren and other utilities, as well as the governor's office, to come to terms and be in alignment on how we need to move forward with updating our grid infrastructure and strengthening consumer protections. I'm actually really proud of the work that has gone into ensuring that we're all finding alignment and able to come to terms on the best strategies to ensure consumer savings. But there have been a lot of hot topics coming up in the clean energy space over the last year or so. Data centers is a really big one and anticipated contributor to increased energy demand. So that's another key issue that we'll be talking about, as well as the need for energy storage, so battery storage infrastructure, to ensure that as we get more renewable energy projects deployed, that during peak demand times or off-peak times, for those sources to be most active, that we're able to maintain the resource adequacy essentially, or as much we're able to deploy as much energy at any time as needed.
You talked about data centers, Samira, and one of the things that I hear often, and in a lot of my readings and research on different topics, data centers. And I make the link maybe incorrectly, so help us all out here a little bit. I think of data centers, and I think about one of the things that is a draw on our energy grids across the country is this whole conversation around crypto. And so help us make some connections of the dots there.
Yeah, both are very energy intensive. So we have been seeing an increase in what are called AI data centers across the nation. And those are particularly energy intensive. So as we see an increase in these being built across the nation and an interest in building more within the state of Illinois, we really want to ensure it. We're very pro-technology. Like, it's not a matter of, they shouldn't be here. But where they stand up is very important around siting and land use. But also, since they are so energy intensive, data centers should be clean, additive, and paid by data centers themselves, and not on the backs of consumers and ratepayers. So that's one reason, or those are some reasons why it's really important that we're talking about this as early as possible in a legislative venue. Again, we're very interested in data centers bringing 100% of the power they need and additional resources to the grid. So again, not drawing down any more energy than they should, and creating constraints and potential blackouts for surrounding residents. The energy that they do use should be 100% clean energy in line with our state goals. So we want to ensure that we're not getting away from CEJA. We have been seeing in other states as these AI data centers get stood up, there are some areas that are permitting fossil fuel energy sourcing for these, and we definitely don't want to see that. And then also on the cost side, so data centers should shoulder the 100% of any added costs that they bring to the grid.
Jobs are a big part of this, and one of the things, in addition to the bill itself, in terms of the CRGA, is the ability to have equitable jobs and jobs that are going to be good paying jobs, that are going to be ones that are allow consumers to be a participant in the economic upside of clean energy. Talk a little bit about that as we wrap up with regard to the importance of jobs, clean jobs being this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've been seeing since the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act passed in 2021, since then we've been in an implementation phase of that act. And it ensures that we're going to stand up workforce and navigator workforce programs all across the state. So transition, whole economy communities over to clean energy communities. And what we're seeing, or what we're anticipating to see with and with the workforce programs, we're really excited. A few cohorts have already graduated from their programs, so we're continuing to track progress there. With the SURJA Act, expanding the transmission system, which is what we're looking to do, saves consumers money in the long run and creates more clean energy jobs. And that's all across the sector. But an example is recent projects approved by one of the regional grid operators serving the state would create between $7.4 and $13.5 billion in benefits and create an estimated 145,000 jobs.
Wow, that's big. That's a big number.
It's huge. Yeah.
So Samira, last couple of questions, I should say. What are the states right now, in addition to Illinois, in your experience, that are paralleling or similar in having this type of legislation be brought to the consumers, or in other words, having legislation that's going to be beneficial like this? A clean energy bill or a clean and reliable grid for Illinois is one thing. However, we don't live with a big wall over or dome over us where we, one state's involvement in one thing doesn't impact another. So if you get my question, what are the other states that are doing things that are similar to this that benefit not just their state, but the rest of the country?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And one thing about my organization, the Illinois Environmental Council, we are an affiliate of the League of Conservation Voters. And as part of that network, there are state leads or state affiliates that are also doing really incredible clean energy work. So there are quite a few. Just in the Midwest alone, Minnesota and Wisconsin are moving forward on some great things, as well as Michigan. We're also seeing a jump in some democracy protections in other parts of the state, like Virginia and Pennsylvania, but in California, of course. But really what we're seeing that I really want to get across, after Illinois passed CEJA, we really stood out as a national leader in the clean energy space. We set the bar, and we've just been seeing this domino effect of other states following our lead and introducing and moving forward on their own clean energy goal bills. And something that continues to stand out to me that Illinois continues to be doing really well are around the equity provisions from CEJA. So other states are starting to catch up, and we need to continue to be competitive, and I think the SERJA Act will help keep us competitive. But where we're really continuing to fly with many colors is around the equity components as it pertains to the workforce pieces. That is one thing where even if other states are setting their 100% clean energy goal targets, we are standing out with that pathway for the transition. And
having the people in place and having the talent in place to be able to take as I'll put it, take the baton of, now that we've got legislation and we have funding behind making these transitions and building up our infrastructure, we have the people in place to implement that. And that's great that's great to hear. Samira, this is a topic that a lot of people are like, okay, I get it. I understand the importance of it, but I don't get it. So I appreciate you taking the time and being with us this morning to put some light on something that it impacts us all. Our environment impacts us all. Nobody gets a pass on that. Nobody gets to go run and hide from our environment and making sure that we have a clean environment and a reliable environment to live on and to live in. So thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. Love to have you back in the future to talk about the progress of the legislation and, of course, the progress of the talent. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of some of the opportunities for people that you see and when we have you on again. How can folks find you? Can they get involved? Can they volunteer? Can they send you money? What can folks do? What can our listeners do? I mean, I want to make sure folks are involved, that they have something to do, and that they know that they don't have to just sit back and go, okay, I'll let those people handle that. How can they get involved?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, and I would love to come back. People can follow us on social media, ILENVIRO or ILENVIRO. We also have a website where we often post action alerts. So that's where you can sign up and send a letter to your elected officials based on the biggest issues that we're facing in the environmental space. So ILEnviro.org is our website. And the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition also has their social media pages and website. So you can find them on Facebook and other social media sites as well.
Fantastic. Samira Hanason, who is one of those people who likes having the title of Energy Policy Director and making sure that we have a brighter future when it comes to our electrical grid and our environment in general. Samira, thank you for being with us, and thanks for being on Choose Views this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Sounds great.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. I mean, listen. Maybe the bright spot here is if you didn't know, now you have a little bit of knowledge or direction to go. And let me read that again before we get to the full top of the hour. You can Google her. Her first name is spelled Samira, Samira Hanason. Email me if you want more information. And the website is ILENVIRO.org. It's Illinois. That would be the abbreviation for IllinoisEnviro.com. Check them out, guys. They're doing great work, and they're doing great work in a space that helps and affects all of us. So glad to have her with us this morning. And one of the things that popped in my mind, Henry, about this is, and I'll have to talk to her about this at another time, is what is really the biggest environmental threat? Right now, it's Donald Trump. And I could have easily gotten in talking about what he said last night about taking restrictions off of, making the EPA less impactful is what Donald Trump said last night, if you guys caught that, which is insane. But that being said, see, here's the thing. This is why I asked her the question about, we don't live in a dome. What are other states doing? Henry, because, Illinois, she said it best. Illinois is doing great work in a lot of areas because of our good leadership. And also because I believe our citizens here are concerned. There are people who don't give a damn about the environment that are in other places in the country. It's clear. They're destructive, they're wasteful, and all the rest. And I won't profess to be the best person when it comes to recycling and all of those things. I do my best, and I could do better, most definitely. At the same time, this is why we have folks like Samira doing the work that she's doing, and we have them partnering with our state legislators and certainly our governor and our lieutenant governor to make things a little bit better. So thank you for being with us, Samira. All right, guys, it's coming to the top of the hour, which means in the 7 o'clock hour on Wednesdays that we have our good friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63 that will be with me in a moment. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Aid is on hold in Gaza.
The aid freeze has imperiled the tenuous progress aid workers say they've made to reduce famine over the past 6 weeks during phase 1 of the ceasefire deal. 3 days in, how's the cutoff impacting Gaza on the ground? There's no major stockpile of tents in Gaza for Palestinians to rely on during the aid freeze, says Shayna Lowe, communications advisor for the Norwegian Refugee Council. The aid that came in during the ceasefire's first phase, she says, was in fact nowhere near enough. Israel says the siege aims at pressuring Hamas to accept its spin-off ceasefire proposal. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
One discrepancy in the death of Gene Hackman, his wife Bessie Arakawa, and one of their 3 dogs has been resolved after authorities mistakenly identified the deceased dog as a German Shepherd. Authorities have been searching for answers after their partially mummified bodies were discovered at their New Mexico home. I'm Ed Donahue, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. A wind advisory will go into effect here this afternoon. A few spotty areas of rain showers here for today. A better chance for rain and snow mixing here late. With cloudy skies, temperatures steady early, then slowly fall through the day. Winds turn northwesterly and increase around 20 to 25 miles per hour, gusting as high as 40. Tonight, a chance for some snow, cloudy, and a low around 27. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 50.
Huge news. Right now at Wendy's, you can get a Son of Baconator for just $3. I don't think you understand this situation. The Son of Baconator is only $3 for a limited time. You know, smoked bacon, rich melted cheese. That Son of Baconator is only $3. Thank you to whoever wished upon that star. For bacon that just won't quit, gotta be Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii, not valid on a combo or on third-party delivery platforms.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820 AM, where facts matter. Take it away, Richard.
Welcome back, progressives, to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. If I have frustrated some of you by saying that the Dems last night at the address did the thing that they should or the best they could have, I don't want you to be disappointed in that. My position is, again, sometimes you have to read the room and you have to live to fight another day. And I think that to have had, Trump call in whomever to start just, removing other Democrats forcefully would not have been a good look. And I know that some people think that sort of more higher vigilant form of protest would have been necessary or should have happened. I just caution that because I know that this would have been an opportunity like none other for Trump to truly cause some damage. That's the part that we have to be mindful of. The fix for this, let's be honest, the fix was prior to the election. Henry said something to me during the break that reminded me. The fix was prior to the election. So listen, anybody that didn't vote, that's keyboard worrying this morning about what the Dems should have done, shut the hell up. I mean, if you've been on social media, and I'm sorry, I would say this to your face if you're listening to the show. If you are keyboard worrying, being a keyboard warrior, Dems should have done, and you didn't vote, sorry. If you didn't do the work prior to the election to help, got a little issue with that. Others who did, I get your point. I'm working with you. I understand. You would like to have seen them throw some flames. At the same time, we got to read the room and understand what that could have turned into. Okay? And so this is why I say that we have to be mindful of the importance of we live to fight another day. Now come out fighting Dems and take it to them. That's how I see it. All right. So just wanted to let you guys know. I hadn't lost my mind. All right. What day is it? It is Wednesday. So let's go to our good friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63. Good morning, Kurt, and welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Richard, and good morning, Ann.
And she says good morning back to you, and she's been trying to text you. So
she has been. Okay.
So pay attention to some of your socials. She's been sending you some stuff. So just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I'll do that.
Good morning to you, my friend.
Hey, good morning to you. Hey, Richard, let's try not to have the conversation that we did the other day, okay? Let's.
That conversation. That's a private conversation for you and me.
You got it.
Nobody gets to know what we said, and certainly not the language that we used. Henry, it was truly to use the phrase. I won't even say it was locker room talk. It was. We were driving down the roadway kind of talk, but
yeah.
I think we
didn't even tell my wife about it.
I didn't tell Ann about the content. I just told her that you and I had a conversation, but not the details. To that end, and I'll give you guys a broad brush on some of the things that Kurt and I talk about offline when he's not on the show. We do. What I would say to any of folks who are listening, who follow our show, follow the work that we do, you have to have an ally that you can go to and talk with. And sometimes it's not your spouse. And I'm not trying to give any kind of counseling here, just sort of, Henry will open up to me about some of his frustrations. I will open up to him about things that I can't stand here. When folks like myself or Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics or Kurt have said, and others, many others, Kurt Herner from Ohio, so many other people across the board have said, have an ally, whether it be Stephanie, whether it be Tom, whether it be Joan, whether it be Patty. When we talk about having an ally, it means having somebody that you can't pick up the phone and scream, and they're going to listen in a non-judgmental way. I believe it's important that you have that person in general, but now in this particular time, because it's important to be able to turn to somebody that will, without judgment, say, "Man, and fill in the blanks with probably some very heated expletives. And that's what Kurt's talking about. That being said, and I'm going to put a little bit of energy out to you guys. Make sure that you have that person or a couple of persons. Please do that. One of my nephews has become very, very vocal about things with me, and I love it because he says things, Kurt, like that. I know I realize how powerful he is in this space right now. So. That's what Kurt and I are talking about. Find that person that you can turn to, that you can yell and scream with, that isn't necessarily your spouse, because your spouse is there for sometimes different reasons. And I mean that in terms of your best friend. Maybe it's not your best friend that you turn to and have those screaming matches with, but there should be somebody that you can turn to and that can in kind turn to you. Y'all get me on that? I hope you do. What say you, Kurt?
Yeah, and the more networking you do and the more people you talk to, the more friends that you make and the more allies that you gain. And it sometimes comes from places you didn't expect, or, wow, okay. I didn't know you felt that way. I'm glad that we had this conversation. So, because I've had many of those recently. So, and it's encouraging. It helps you come from places that you don't like going to. And I think we all have those moments. We all have those times, especially now, where things happen and we just think, whatever the case may be. And by opening up your mind and your vocals and your heart and being able to talk to people, that's a great way to just get through this. And this is how you get involved. You don't have to, do anything monumental. You don't have to reinvent sliced bread or anything. All you got to do is just communicate,
That's
just
right.
Be part of it.
It's important.
I value what we have. So, and what I have with many people. So,
and what you just said to the point about networking is critically important. Make sure that you're reaching other people that can be in your world. I want to do something we haven't done in a while, Kurt. We have a call that I want to take that I don't want them to have to hold much longer, because I know after this we're going to go to our next guest. Let's take a call from our good friend Jim here in Chicago. Hey, Jim, good morning. Welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning. I was just thinking,
hey, Jim.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Our search for sanity seems to be very elusive. In last night's speech, where the people that cheered it would elbow each other for a front row seat at a crucifixion.
Wow.
They're the Barabbas crowd, Jim. They're the Barabbas crowd,
Wow.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, incredibly. Yeah. But to anyway, you and you guys realize this. He has some kind of what his allure is, I'll never understand. But the allure to his followers, his loyal followers, are indescribable. I can't even imagine it. But anyway, thanks for taking my call, guys. Thanks. Have a good day. Thank you.
You too, Jim. Thanks so much.
Hey, Jim. You too, man.
Yeah, that's interesting with the elbow. So I want to deal with a couple. I want to clean up a little bit on aisle 7. I made a mention earlier about folks that I didn't want to be keyboard warriors that were not participants. Let me be clear, in case you all didn't hear me. When I said keyboard warriors earlier, I was talking about people who did not participate in this last election. Did I not say that, Henry? I said, don't be a keyboard warrior if you didn't participate in the election, in the last election. I was talking about that 69 million people that didn't get out and vote, that are now complaining that the Dems aren't doing enough. So I'm being very specific, and I want to make sure that, because I got a couple text messages from people that said that I was offensive in saying that. I was being specific. So I want to clean it up on aisle 7 very quickly. If you were not a participant in this election cycle, if you didn't vote specifically, and now you're yelling and screaming, that's who I was speaking to. Those of you who've been involved in electoral politics for years and been doing things for a long, long time, I wasn't talking to you. I specifically made that definition or drew that line. I was talking about the people who didn't do anything. Those of you who have and been involved and been working all over the country, I praise what you guys have been doing. I praise the commentary. So just don't take that the wrong way for those who are a little bit feathers ruffled in that space. I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to those that didn't do a doggone thing. So there you go. Jim's right though. They would line up.
Yeah.
I think they would line up to do exactly what he said in the manner in which he said it. So it was so. So let's talk a little bit about last night. What you saw, your observations. I know I'm making an assumption, Kurt, that you watched it or parts of it. What's your takeaway?
Well, your assumption's wrong. I didn't watch any of it. I was busy networking with some people on a couple different phone calls last night. I made a commitment, and see that's the difference. Maybe I should have. Maybe my participation should be I should watch things like that to be informed.
There's no should. There's no should to it.
But you know what? I didn't watch it. I've seen a few clips this morning, but I could have wrote down verbatim what happened last night about 11:30 without watching it.
Yeah.
I could have told you what went on. Okay, I can't stand the sight and the sound of this dude anymore, okay? He does nothing but lie. That's all this guy does. He has a delusional memory. And, some of the clips I've seen tonight, he's talking about how he helped out the farmers back in 2017 and what have you. I mean, this guy it's beyond, Richard, man, I just can't, I don't know. I spent the day in Indianapolis at the protest, and I sat down and had some great conversation with some people. I went down there and took a few pictures and did a couple interviews, and I met a wonderful guy that I want to tell you about, a bright spot for Indiana in the future here. But I just sat down, and I had some one-on-one conversations. It was so inspiring, but it was also so heartbreaking to hear the stories of, I talked to an old lady, Judy, 73 years old. She's on a $16,000 income a year. That's what she lives on, okay? Her main source of income, her only source, from what I gathered, is Social Security, and Medicaid is her only source of insurance or medical coverage.
Right.
I mean, I sat there and I had to give her a hug, okay, because she was brought to tears with our conversation. And I told her, I said, that wasn't my intention, but that's what the reality is, Then I sat down with Nikki and Cody, I think their names were. Both of them, I think, probably late 20s, early 30s. Both of them recently lost their jobs because of the cuts that DOJ has been making. They're both federal employees. They're at a loss. They don't know what they're going to do. They just moved into a new apartment before Christmas. I mean, the impact that this, I can't say it because I got to remember we're not on our phone conversation. I mean, the impact that this dude is having on people's lives is just, I struggle to find the words, Richard. I really do. But when you sit down and you talk with just normal folk,
yeah,
it's heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching.
It puts a spotlight.
By the way, Nikki and Cody, they voted for Trump.
No.
Okay? But they were at the rally yesterday because they realized the mistake that they made. I tried to do a reel with them and get an interview, and they didn't want, didn't want me to do that, which I understand. I understand that.
Well, how did you? So let me. I have to ask you this question because I know that this is going to be coming at me more and more, and so I want to get your take rather than me putting my opinion on something. When you heard, when they shared with you that that's how they voted, how did it strike you? How did you respond or react? What happened next? I think that's the question that a lot of people want to have a conversation, or that's the thing people want to talk about. So sorry.
Well, I don't have the reaction that, FAFO. I don't react that way because, people make mistakes. People, just especially our younger generation, I absolutely respect them and adore them. But their source of where they get information from is not good.
Yeah.
Okay? Majority of younger kids get their primary information comes from TikTok and YouTube and podcasts. And we've talked about this before. Podcasts are a great thing, but there's a lot of podcasts out there that are absolutely horrible. I mean, if you talk to your nephew, I don't know how old he is, but if you talk to somebody that's from 18 to 24 or what have you, and if you ask them where they get their news from, they'll tell you people you've never heard of.
Yeah.
They'll name people, and you're like, well, who's that? And then you Google them, and it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I told them, I said, look, I'm just happy that you're here and that you understand what has happened. And, one of the things that I tried to, because I told them who I was and the one had heard of me. And I said, the one thing that I try to do with people is I try to educate them because people just don't know the facts. Yeah. I said, us Democrats are always called snowflakes that we react on feeling. But I said, it's actually the MAGA group they're the snowflakes. They're the ones that react on feelings. They don't react on fact. They react on feelings. And so being here and being present today, and you being part of this and seeing a mixture of people, I told the one, I said, look out here, look out. You've got young and old and black and brown and, you've got Jews and Muslims and Mexicans. I mean, you've got a melting pot of people out here. You've got people with gray hair and people with pink hair. That's what we're about. We're about, everybody. I said, have you ever been to a Trump rally? Neither one of them had. I said, when you look out there, what do you see? You see a bunch of red hats on white people. That's what you see. And I said, there's a huge difference here. So
kudos to you, my man. For a couple of things. First of all, kudos for going and being there, being in representation and showing folks that, when I talk, oftentimes people talk about representation. Representation has an interesting meaning for someone of color, someone black and other folks of color, for women, for the LGBT community, and all the rest. It may mean someone specific to that community, and the same thing applies. And I would be hypocritical if I didn't say this. When a white dude like Kurt Mullins shows up at an event carrying the torch, that's representation also. So I want people to understand when I say that, I mean it, because you showing up was important, because now this is what that vessel, that bridge is all about. You found two folks that were like, damn, we made a mistake. So what did they do? Mm-hmm. They showed up, because that's now representation. And when I was talking to Mike Nellis on Monday about the feeling that a lot of people have, it's like, wait a minute, we're not. We have to call people on the fact that they made this mistake. We have to let them know. That's part of the education. That's part of helping people understand. At the same time, we have to, as part of our representation, let them know, yeah, you made a mistake. Now what are you going to do to fix it? And sometimes to fix it is doing like, these ladies did. They showed up at an event to protest. Now our hope is that they pull more into the fold.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who admits to making a mistake should be bashed on the head. I mean, I've just always felt that way.
That's the key, though.
You can be critical.
Yeah, making the mistake and then acknowledging it. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Kurt.
No. We're human beings. We make mistakes. Acknowledging it means that you're human, that you understand, that you're not filled with narcissism. Donald Trump will never, ever admit that he's made a mistake about anything. And that's the difference between a narcissistic creep like him and a normal human being. Richard, you and I have talked about this before, about how, you being a black man and how your life has been different than, what my life has been. And some of the things that I feel like, okay, maybe I've experienced some of that prejudice and that discrimination because I walk around with my white dude for Harris hat in a Republican city, in a Republican state, and nowhere near what you have, when we've talked about this, you know that.
Right.
But you got to realize what it's like for a 61-year-old white dude to walk up to a couple of young girls to talk to them. The stereotypes that I've been, that have been placed on me because of what old white men have done in this country.
Yeah.
And I understand it. Because the one looked at me and she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Look," I said, hey, I know, gray hair. I said, but I just want to talk to you guys. I seen you sitting over here and, well, what do you want to talk about? And then that's where the conversation came to. And, those are the type of things that I get faced with. It happened a couple times yesterday.
Yeah.
But I refuse to not walk up to people and talk to them. And I've realized that going down to an event like that, which, by the way, Diana and I are going down Saturday because there's a women's march in Indianapolis, and it's supposed to be huge. I mean, we had over 1,000 people there yesterday, which was wonderful. So we're going right back down on Saturday to this. But I realized instead of me going down and doing my little reels and taking a bunch of pictures for post, that I have a different mission to do at these events, and that's to put a human element to it, to talk to people. Because that's what people.
I told you, man. I told you, and not that it was about me, but when we were talking about this privately and on the air, this goes back to the whole idea that we have to stay involved, we have to stay engaged. When you were, as you openly admitted on the show, said, "I'm struggling right now." I wanted to remind you that your voice is powerful, and you found your voice. You had, to use a sports analogy, you needed to sit on the bench for a little bit and get right, and now you're back in the game. See, because people follow that. That's when we talk about active leadership, Kurt. That's what people follow. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for those, Kurt Mullets of the world who are going to, come out and be a participant. And so now you've sort of added to your game by saying, I'm going to do my reels, I'm going to get my photos, but I'm also going to engage folks to say, hey, what's going on? What did you do? How'd you do it? All right, how can we fix this and make it better? And I think a lot of people are looking for that. And I appreciate you, being a catalyst on this Wednesday in that space.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for those words. And I mean, you've always got to be searching for what you can do. I mean, that's just something that I'm learning. Okay. And I should have learned this when I was a young kid, because I had a coach tell me exactly what you just said one time. You know what? I'm going to sit you on the end of the bench because until you're going to give me 100%, you're not giving me any. And I realized, okay, I understand. And he said that because he knew I wasn't putting forth my potential. He's seen a potential in me that I wasn't seeing. And so I should have known that. So, and hey, I know we got to go, but I want to tell you real quick about a guy, Jackson Franklin, okay? And I'm going to get you some information here because I would love for you to invite him onto your show someday to talk to him. He is running for U.S. District 5, Indiana District 5, congressional seat. And he's going up against Sylvia, what's her name? So I think it's Sylvia. The Ukrainian, Sostik. Gosh dang it.
That's okay. So talk about him. Talk about him.
Okay. Anyway, so he is a 25-year-old from Muncie, Indiana. Okay, and he spoke yesterday, and I was standing there listening to him, and I was like, wow, this kid. He's an Army National Guard medic. He works for the Delaware County EMT as a medic. He inspired. I couldn't believe, and I told him this. I said, "Dude, you're 25 years old. I'm 61, and you just inspired me like
nobody's business." Yeah,
I was not expecting this today.
So
I was not expecting this today.
Let's do this, because I got to get to this break, and we've got another guest coming on shortly.
Right.
Pull together, because I'm sure people are going to want to hear more about him and what he's doing. Pull together what you can, and then you and I'll figure out how to get him on the show and do what we got to do, because that's an important name to have out there. Kurt, I got to run.
Yeah.
I do. It's good to have you on today.
I know you do, man.
And appreciate the work and going down yesterday and again this weekend. And we'll talk next Wednesday about the outcome of this Saturday's trip down to Indianapolis. But thanks again for being with us, man. I appreciate it.
Okay. Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. Talk to you soon. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. My goodness, Kurt was full up with lots of information and activity. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Welcome back, Progressives. Choose Views here, 773-763-9278. I know that a few of you are on hold. We'll get to you before the end of the show. We have with us this morning one of our other great, brilliant minds in the space of making things better here in the state of Illinois and more broadly the rest of the country. With us this morning is Jade Dill, the Director of Budgetary Analysis at the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability, also known as CTBA. Good morning, Jade, and welcome to Choose Views. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good with your graduate from Hampton University. So why am I teasing you about that? I have a niece and a nephew that both went to and graduated from Hampton. So
oh really? Oh, that's wonderful.
And my good
I thought you were going to tease me because they went to Howard.
Well, no, wait. Here's the thing. My good friend and co-host on the Family Meeting, which is a show here on the station on Sundays. He is a graduate of Howard, and there is no other school on the planet that exists, whether it be an HBCU or a PWI. The only college in the world is Howard University. So. And to that end, I tell this crazy story. We went to Howard homecoming a few years ago, and it was the same weekend that Hampton had its homecoming. And my niece found out that I went, and she was not happy. She's like, "Wait a minute, you've never gone to homecoming with me."
Exactly.
Oh, goodness gracious. Jay, we need your energy and your laughter this morning. And thank you so much for being with us on the show. I'd like to take a moment to just have folks have a better understanding of who CTBA is, what you guys do, and why it's so critically important right now when it comes to some of the deficits that our state has and other states have in the country.
Yeah. So I would really kind of categorize us more so as like a research think tank. And so we do focus on some specific policies, one being the state of Illinois' budget, but we also do the city of Chicago's budget. We definitely work on state and city pensions, as well as education. Those are our main policy focuses, but we also do some other work in housing policy as well as healthcare policy as well.
Got it. So when it comes to policy, and one of our guests earlier in the show, Samira Hainison, talked about the policy side of energy, clean energy specifically. And when you said think tank, I'm sure a lot of people were like, "Oh my God." However, the importance of think tanks and the importance of groups that work like yours is so, I think, integral to helping give kind of a bridge to policy. And what I mean by that is a lot of times there's there's those who, determine policy, put forward policy, vote on it, and enact it. And then it happens and people go, okay, how did that happen? One of the things that I think that groups like yours and Samara's have to offer regular folks is a bridge, because of the fact that you are a, quote, think tank or an organization that can kind of tear apart some of the complicated parts of bills and legislation. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, I would for sure agree with that assessment.
Tell us why your group specifically has been able to champion that kind of an effort.
I think because we put out a lot of non-biased work, and so I think a lot of legislators and policymakers trust us, and then also I think a lot of policymakers trust us, and they use a lot of our reports, and they kind of lean on us for our advice. To kind of work through these policies and how they look on how they look for actual people, and not just what sounds good in Springfield or maybe even Washington D.C. Because they don't. A lot of policymakers can get into the weeds, and you'll forget what does this actually look like for students, or what does it actually look like for community members in our cities and across the state.
Got it. I think bridging is so important. And oftentimes people just don't understand something, and where do they turn to get answers and information and advice? So kudos to you for being one of those folks and part of an organization that does it. Jay, let's talk a little bit about the governor's State of the State address a few weeks ago. And let's talk about our own general fund here in the state of Illinois. What are your observations?
So I guess some pluses for it. The general fund budget, or the general fund budget for FY 2026 is at $1.62 billion above FY 2025 estimates. So I would say that's a good thing, but we're still dealing with I think if you remember the governor mentioning there's going to be less than 1% in terms of increases to expenditures. So things like education or human services, healthcare, and public safety, those are the main pieces of the general fund budget, and 95% of our expenditures go to those core services, but they're not really seeing any increases, no meaningful increases in FY 2026, and that's because we don't really have the revenue for it. And so the governor did mention that FY 2026 is going to look, it's kind of looking more so like 2025 in terms of there not being a lot of revenue increases, and that's mainly because we don't, taxes have been historically unpopular here. So tax increases are not something that the governor or even maybe a lot of legislators are pushing for. So FY 2025, I would say we were looking at other revenue enhancements. So that would be the sports wagering taxes, the corporate net operating loss deduction, and then lastly, the retailer's discount. Those were the revenue increases for FY 2025. FY 2026 doesn't really have a lot of those, so we're not looking at a lot of new revenue enhancements. So there's not a lot of new revenue sources coming in with more revenue for FY 2026.
So with raising taxes, nobody wants to see their taxes go up. But I've heard people say, if my taxes increase and I see an increase in services and improvement of the variety of things that we all share, the roads, the social services, our standard bearers in terms of fire and water and policing and all the rest, then I can see that I'm okay with paying a little bit more in taxes, because along with that comes potentially the increase in property value. So there's a little bit of an offset. But I think that the other side of this is, and this is where we all get caught up, is how do we generate new revenue that's not tax driven from individuals? And that tends to go back to bringing businesses into the community, bringing businesses into the state, so that the tax burden is not on individuals, but more in line with bigger businesses. I mean, am I off center here? And if I am, help us get back to the middle.
Well, so in terms of, I would say, the state of Illinois is a pretty predominantly heavily property tax dependent state. But there is another tax revenue source that we're not exploring, which is expanding the sales tax to include services. So we could be taxing more on services that we're not, and that could provide us with more revenue. So things like being taxed on your haircuts or, a dog walker. Like those are kinds of services that are not taxed in Illinois that could be taxed, and we could receive more revenue growth from that.
So people that don't own property don't pay the raw property tax. If someone's renting, they may indirectly pay it because their rent's a little bit higher proportionately, so that the owner of that property ends up covering their costs of, your property tax is $10,000 a year. You know how the math works on that. But let me come back to what you're saying about the food services piece, or not just food services, but the services. What would that actually look like, and what kind of revenue would be generated? And then the third part of this, Jade, is how do you think citizens will feel about that type of tax being levied on some of those things in your research and experience?
So let me make sure I got all of your questions. So you said, what would that look like?
Yeah, if we were to, how does that actually, my question is, how does that actually work where that tax is applied? This is where this is that bridge moment where you can say, here's an opportunity for an increase in revenue. Here's how it would work or what it would look like. Let's start with that one first.
Mm-hmm. So I think, we do tax some services. So I think the state of Illinois does know how to tax services. I think that's not a new concept. I think it would be more so. It would be more so for the other services that we have not generally taxed previously. So these may be more difficult to do, in the interim of us gearing up for it. But I think it's possible because there are plenty of other states that are surrounding Illinois that do tax these services. So we could look to these other states to see how they do it, and then that could give us the blueprint of how we can implement that ourselves.
Is it from what you know or hearing, are legislators open to that? Have there been any talks about that being something to really lean into, maybe gradually work into different services, a list of 10, and we start with 2 kind of thing, or what are you hearing there?
I haven't heard that specifically, but I don't know if it's just because generally taxes, bad, and we're looking for something else in terms of revenue sources. So I think it might be harder to go over with the general public, but I think this is adding additional sales tax to services could decrease our reliance on other taxes, right? So that could be a good thing for, our schools, hopefully, if that means we're less property tax dependent.
Got it. What kind of revenue do you think it would generate? I know that's a big question because of what services would be taxed in that way. But if that were the direction that the legislatures were able to go, what do you think could be the number?
I don't have a number off the top of my head, and that would depend on which services they decide to tax and when. So I think it would probably just be determined on those kinds of things, like where do we start? Do we start at the ones that are most popular services, or do we start small?
Right. Okay. One of the things that took place that's been I think a plus for Governor Pritzker and the state's legislature is that they were able to really take care of the rainy day fund. And the previous, the Rauner administration really sort of tanked us in that space. Let's talk about the importance of the rainy day fund being shored up by Governor Pritzker and candidly by the work with State Comptroller Susana Mendoza.
Yeah, the rainy day fund currently sits at, I believe, just about $2.2 billion, and that's amazing, especially because under the previous governor, Governor Rauner, we were really at zero, basically. So we've done a lot, and I can commend Governor Pritzker for that, for sure.
Also, the prepaying of the pension debt is another positive box to check for the governor, and how his administration was really able to kind of pull us out of that fire as well, or at least to work in that direction. What are some of the impacts of that right now?
Yeah, so prepaying the pension, that I believe it was $700 million more than what was required, and so that was definitely a good push. Just because, as you know, the pension ramp that was passed back in FY 1995. That was really to kind of offset the state of Illinois' structural deficit, which we're still in, but we just backloaded pension payments. So the idea with that is, by 2045, pension, we'd be 90% funded in our pensions. And although that $700 million was helpful, pension payments still make up a big portion of our general fund revenue. So our general fund expenditures, and with these backloaded payments, it's just going to increase. So although the $700 million was helpful, we're still, $10.6 billion is the required payment for this year. Wow.
So there are some accomplishments that have taken place and that are taking hold. What are, as you look down this next the rest of this year, as it were, what are some of the priorities that you feel that the state needs to be focused on, and even the city of Chicago being the biggest player in the state and certainly in the region? What do you think that should be, your wish list, if you will, of the things that they should be focusing on at this point in time?
Ooh, my wish list. So I would say at CTPA, one thing that we mention over and over is that the state of Illinois, we need to re-amortize the pension debt. So if we could do that, and that just is like changing how we pay the pension, so prepaying them in the beginning of the year versus the end, using pension bonds to kind of help us let me get my words correctly. So we use pension bonds, and that's going to help us get the pensions on track. I would say that. And so over the 2045, if we re-amortize the pension debt, we could, by the 2045 pension original debt or date year for the pension ramp, we could potentially save $46 billion, and that's only with 90% funded. If we want to 100% fund these, the pensions, which would push us to 2048, so that's similar to Governor Pritzker's pension proposal as well. We could get the pensions 100% funded, and we could save $23.8 billion. So I think I would say that is one of the biggest on my wish list for the state of Illinois. And I would say my second one is education funding. One, I would say higher education. We are not funding higher education well in the state of Illinois. If we just look at how much we funded higher education in FY 2000 versus FY 2025, higher education funding is down 42%. So that means that means that students have to pay more tuition because the state is not paying enough into higher education. So I would say those two are on my wish list for the state of Illinois.
Got it. Well, and particularly with regard to education, that's particularly important now as it relates to what federal funding is going to be pulled, potentially, if not reality, with this current administration. So, great conversation, Jade. Good to have you with us this morning. And I appreciate you taking some time to hang with us and chat a little bit about the budget issues and trying to be a bridge to help folks have a little bit better understanding of not only the work that you do, but what that represents when it comes to our state funding. So when you do the work that you do, it becomes very important to understand that the more people like you are out there doing it, the more I think general, regular folks have an understanding of what matters. So appreciate you. And we'll have you back in the future. Let folks know how they can follow the organization before we leave.
Yeah, so you can follow us on our website at ctba.com. ctbaonline.org. So you can follow us there. I believe we're also on some of the socials, but I would say mostly our website. We do have a fiscal symposium coming up in April. Okay. So we're going to talk about reinvesting in Illinois in higher education.
Is that open to the public?
Definitely check. Let's see.
Is it a live event or is it an online event?
It's a live event, but we are also, I believe we're also going to have it streaming as well. So
excellent.
Definitely check us out at that on those two fronts on the website in this fiscal symposium. And then, we're always pushing out reports. So I will be pushing out an analysis on the proposed budget later this spring. So check us out on that as well.
Fantastic. Jade Dill, thanks for being with us this morning, and we look forward to having you back in the future to talk about these ongoing events and certainly the symposium that you guys have. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day. Bye now.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Complicated stuff, guys, but important to understand that these are the machinations of how we get things done. It just is. That's the reality. Hey, guys, listen, let me grab a quick call before we walk out of here. Let's get to Steve real quickly. Hey, Steve, welcome to the show. I want to try to get you in before we finish up today. Uh-oh. Steve, you there? No? I see him on the board, but I don't see him. Okay. All right. Steve, if you're there, give us a holler back tomorrow because I don't want to tie up the time as we wrap up the show today because I got a couple of house cleaning items that get knocked out today. Live, local, and progressive, Joan Esposito will be joined by Jeet Heer, National Affairs correspondent and columnist for The Nation, Dan Hinkle, investigative editor at Injustice Watch, and Mike Lux, co-founder of Democracy Partners, and Michael Kang, Northwestern professor of law. That's Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive, 2 to 5 today here on WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk. For how long? 20 years. Tonight, 5 to 7. Patty will be broadcasting live from Nolans, and her guests will include investigative journalist, filmmaker Greg Palast, who won't be in New Orleans, but he'll be the guest. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez. Check her out, her show today. Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, and YouTube, as well as Facebook. And then tomorrow, here on my show, guest will be Kelly Hallberg, scientific director at the Inclusive Economy Lab at the University of Chicago's Urban Labs, Marcia Levick, chief legal officer at the Juvenile Law Center, and Jamila Trumiel, CEO and founder of Ladies of Virtue. That's tomorrow here on Choose Views. Great to be with you guys, as always. I appreciate you staying with us and plugging in and your text messages and your emails and all that. And we want to keep you, as I always say, as full up as possible so that you can be the one to stand in the void, like my good man and good friend, Mr. Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63. So there you go. All right. I guess we have to get to Steve tomorrow because it doesn't seem like it. That's all right. Steve, if you're holding and we can't get through to you, call us back tomorrow. I promise you we'll talk to you then. So Dems did all they could do, guys, under the circumstances. Let's get behind them and encourage them to come out fighting today and the days in the near future, because that's really the optics. I believe that, and I'm hoping you guys can see that at this point. That's why we have to fight a little bit harder and make sure that they know that we're behind them across the board. So there you go. Good to be with you once again. This is Choose Views, and what do I say at the end of every show? Take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.